And now we have the panel, the first panel coming up. There will be also a second panel, but now this panel will be about can AI heal the world? And it's a closely interlinked topic, of course. And Tanja has an injury, obviously, so can we help? Thanks. All right, ta-da! Well, Tanja will introduce her panel guests herself, and after the panel there will be the lunch break. So let's enjoy our first panel.
Is it on? Yes, now it's on. I'm Tanja, and I'm a futurist. As a futurist, you need to have diverse perspectives on the world, and I try this best to also work in really diverse areas. So I'm the vice chair of the Association of Professional Futurists, where we really want to bring futures thinking into the world and believe organizations, people, and politics will be better by applying future thinking. Also, we created a company called Futures to All, where we believe that organization needs to take on responsibilities in shaping desirable futures. Then we have a future space community, where we believe individuals can best work together in bringing their images of the future and exchange in order to create better futures. And last thing is that I do also consult the EU Commission on how can we bring futures thinking into policy and R&I and get knowledge from researchers all over the world together. When I say I'm a futurist, though, many people believe that we bring the crystal ball and tell you how the future will be. But it's actually the opposite. And my skill is to facilitate conversations of the future and enable people to think about the risks, but also the chances and opportunities in creating desirable futures. So I'm very happy to be here today and to lead the panel on Does AI Solve the World? One second. And with me, we have three amazing people who will bring different perspectives from politics, entrepreneurships, and foundation. So on my left, I welcome Mario Brandenburg. He's the Parliamentary State Secretary for the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, and also the spokesman of the Committee Digital Agenda on the Study Commission of Artificial Intelligence. Then in the middle, we have Daria Saharova, founding partner of the World Fund, backing entrepreneurs, building climate tech for a regeneration world. And she's also the co-founder of 1E9, a digital think tank for futures optimists and techies. On the very right-hand side here, it's Janette Wiget, the CFO of Rantix. They build and scale AI-first companies through incubation and financing, co-founding organizations. She is also working with the AI Campus Berlin, where she's the co-founder for a not-for-profit space for research and collaboration of over 60 AI projects. So I want to start this panel today, since we heard now a lot about the risks of it. What are some chances of AI? And what are some especially biggest positive impacts that AI could be? And are there some projects out there where these panelists are also working on to see this positive impact? So I start to my left with Mario. Where do you see the positive impacts of AI?
Dirk, right, so hello everybody, first of all. I guess there are many positive aspects, and I basically like the running order that we just listened, is AI evil, and 10 minutes later it should just fix the world. So basically it already shows what we expect from AI. So therefore the positive things, the positive objects we will see will still be in pattern recognition and optimization when it comes to climate change, being the political guy on stage, doing basically database decisions, not letting the machine decide, as Carla explained it, but really focus on data, which basically in my daily political life I would say is still rare to have it like real database and have a real view on the things. And therefore I think it can really give us some clarity and a view on many things to just make better decisions. So it's not really like whatever GPT-3 or a framework, so it will be the full thing in using AI in a supply chain or in a supply chain of decision making.
Thank you. Daria, what's your perspective on this?
Well, the title of our panel today is if AI can save the world. Well, the answer is definitely no. But it does, it is one of the core technologies to address the climate change. So I'm a founder of World Fund. We are the biggest European climate tech VC. So we invest, as you said, in transformative technologies, and AI is definitely one of them. And I want to point out maybe, kind of 3 biggest areas where AI has a very positive, or have a very positive impact. And all these 3 areas are the biggest emitting industries in terms of CO2, and that's FALO first, so food and agriculture and land use. And just kind of to point out one example, for example, it's also a great start, is a kind of a range of companies, satellite companies today, who use satellite data, enrich it with kind of infrared data, for example, and use kind of a layer of AI to be able to analyze and optimize the agriculture. For example, to be able to prevent crop diseases, several pathogens coming up. So kind of we're safe on that part, but also wildfires, which is one of the biggest issues given the climate temperature rise. There is a company called Aurora Tech from Munich. So I'm also from Munich. I'm going to promote Munich a lot today, being in Berlin on the stage. So Aurora Tech, a fantastic company, so they do exactly the same. And then, of course, if we talk about, a human, so save the planet is also saving us. We talked about it yesterday. We eat so much crap, and this crap is killing us. But every single one of us in a different way, right? So AI can actually tell us and learn us how to optimize our own nutrition in a way. So I'm wearing this thing. I think there are some of you who know that. So I'm trying to, for example, so with that, with this sensor, I'm trying to monitor my glucose levels. But then, to have someone to run a level, say okay, and so what's then I learned, and then to optimize that for me, I think that's very powerful, and that can be happening today. And maybe because I'm talking already so long, just the second part is built environment. We can use AI to actually create new designs, new materials like cement. Cement is responsible for almost 8% of CO2 emissions worldwide.
Could be a politician, actually.
I'm working on it.
Thank you so much. And you, Janette, you're working to scale AI companies and also to foster their collaboration. And we heard earlier in the talks that collaborations will be one of the key things in order to create better AI and make it happen. So how do you see this positive impact?
Exactly, yeah. Also a very warm welcome from my end, and also a great job, Fabian and Veronica, putting it all together. Thank you so much for having me here. It's really nice. I think before I say something about the collaboration point, I was very inspired when Fabian told me about the panel that is called "Can AI Heal the World?" Because in the end, we work with AI on a daily basis. And the reason why we have opened, or why we started an AI venture studio with Merantix is because we believe that AI is a general purpose technology, and it actually can have a very, very positive impact on the world and can solve many different challenges. But where I then want to come to the collaboration point is, it's not AI alone that can save challenges, and by that I mean, yes, there's other factors that we need to save the world, but most importantly, when we're narrowing it down to AI and the AI space, the algorithms itself, they will not heal anything. And we need processes, we need products that are AI enabled, because in the end, the user will not use the product because it's an AI product. The user will use the product because it solves a problem or a topic or a task he or she wants to be doing. And I think that's the actual challenge we have to solve. It's a big one because also internet itself doesn't help or doesn't bring us anything, and we have to actually work in order to collaborate with different stakeholder groups, with different people that work on AI. It's researchers, it's corporate partners who know all of their processes, products in and out. It's the talent, it's the startups who can then really think of novel things to really put together all the different factors to make sure that we do not only create AI, but actually make sure that there is products and processes AI-enabled that then solve these actual challenges, not only in incremental, but then actually in a disruptive way. And that can only be done by collaboration. That's a continuous question and also approach that we face and have chosen at Merantix and also at the AI campus, is that you have to work together with everyone in Germany, in Berlin and Europe, and a very diverse group in order to make this happen. And this is also why we believe in conferences like this, where I don't want to only see startups, but I want to see people from policy making. I want to see people from corporates and all from different fields, and then also bring them together on spaces like that, the one we have on the AI campus.
Thank you so much. Besides collaboration, we also heard that we need more curiosity versus the security. Daria, you're working with a lot of entrepreneurs and trying to fix and come up with some climate change technologies in order to solve that. So how do you see those entrepreneurs working and fostering their curiosity in comparison to the security they're taking on while developing these new technologies?
That's a good question. I think an entrepreneur per se is a curious person and is driven to, kind of solve a problem which him or her has in mind. Not trying to be politically correct now, but I don't think that if you are a founder in whatever space in Germany, you have to be ready to break some security rules.
Mario, you're in the department, and working with education and research. So what do you see? What kind of ecosystem, or what we see in the education or others, what do we need to foster more entrepreneurship, maybe social entrepreneurship from that perspective?
So I guess I didn't hear the last sentence where there was like a noise, something like, no, just kidding. I mean, there's probably some truth to it, but to answer your question, the curiosity you mentioned is something which is probably not a KPI in the political system, to be honest. And therefore, it sometimes feels for entrepreneurs or people who want to change something that this is not really welcomed. So seeing it now, I mean, I moved into politics, now it's 5 years ago, so I was a tech person, believe me, I had a life. So, but and now I'm on the other side, and I can basically feel how hard it is to teach and explain that system, that there is a value in trying, not only in regulating, in bringing something really like into order, but just in letting it happen. So this curiosity or just playing for the sake of playing, it's important. And this is something we somehow have to make possible in Germany. This is, I guess, why all these agencies pop up, why regulatory sandboxes pop up. So these are all some satellite concepts orbiting around the very stiff regulatory framework, because if you can prove that something works, you somehow take the, how should I say, the frightency of the people or the regulators in the end that this is okay. And the last sentence to social entrepreneurship, this is why we have Sarah Brun in the BMBF now as the Beauftragte for social entrepreneurship. Very sexy and catchy title, but that's how it is probably. And she really should make sure that we are running offers or programs or whatever, that this really doesn't fall off the table, because normally they are really seen by classical measures, like mostly monetary measures or patents or something, but really letting stuff happen, to come back to that, with a good social benefit, then it's just okay to let it be. And I guess there is some way to go in that system to change that.
Thank you. Janette, when you're scaling or looking for companies and startups that you fund, what are specific applications that you look at? Where do you see is AI best used for positive impact?
I think AI has the potential to have a positive impact and disrupt basically any kind of industry. Of course, at Merantix, we see it as our job and mission to really solve the biggest challenges that are out there. And I think it's then definitely when we come to healthcare. AI can have a big impact, and one of our portfolio companies, they are called Avara. They're actually active in breast cancer screening, where we are not only tapping into the German market, but are also now expanding to Latin America and other emerging markets to really make sure that every single woman has access to breast cancer screening, and therefore we can actually detect breast cancer much earlier, and therefore there is hopefully not as many women that are sadly dying of that cancer every year. But also, of course, on the biotech, and Daria honestly mentioned it before, in regards to new materials, we see now to what extent we're actually dependent still on petrochemical materials, and the potential in regards to biomaterials is so big, and in that combined with computational technologies that will actually allow us to, for example, come up with entirely new biomaterials. And in that regard, we have our portfolio company called Cambrium. They are engineering proteins so that we can actually replace those materials from the slaughterhouse, from all those petrochemicals to basically, bring us forward and create materials that are not only sustainable, but that are performing better, and in the end are ideally even more cost efficient.
Thank you. We also heard earlier that AI and energy are highly interconnected, meaning, of course, with more and more AI, we actually also use more energy. Streaming is a great opportunity for people for less traveling, but we also know that all the video streaming services on social platforms also increase highly the energy consumptions. So my question, and this is open for anyone who wants to answer, is how do we take on those challenges that come up with using more and more AI technology and maybe replacing human power where human energy might be less environmental friendly?
Politics first.
Oh, that's nice. So to be brutally honest, I guess this is a part of the whole serenity discussion. So like there's a topic every year, and at the moment everything is about whatever sort of digital or security or whatever serenity. And to be honest, we are seeing that we are trying to get rid of Russian oil, but now we are addicted to Chinese solar panels. So I'm not sure if this, we have to do it, so I'm fully behind all these decisions, but we have to see it on a long scale. And so for sure, we celebrate AI, we all want AI, it comes with energy consumption. If this is green energy and we are not getting new, let's say, problematic friends so far, I think that's not the problem, but this really is something the politics has to answer, at least from a direction, and society then has to follow or has to say, no, that's not our way. So I wouldn't make it that small, just talking about AI. That's really a general thing. If we want to have all that stuff, we really should think about like what is the price to do that, and therefore I guess right now it will need more energy. It's good that, or it's not good, but that's the price we pay for understanding more of what we do. Like new materials, like curing cancer, we all want to have that stuff. So therefore that's probably well spent energy, sorry to the planet at that point. But there needs to be a strategy that this stops. You know, we cannot go on further. And this, to be honest, at least from my perspective, we didn't answer it, and probably no country on the world really answered how this should go on.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I think just like as a stat, maybe interesting number, that the data centers or the infrastructure, including AI, in Germany has a higher CO2 emission number per year than the whole of the flights. So we always talk about the aviation, but there are like also different different kinds of CO2 emitters. So I think one of this, I agree with you, but then kind of, I have to, I'm trying to be a politician now too, but there is also another solution as a midterm, maybe long term, is quantum, right? Which is more high performance, less energy saving, not less energy saving, more energy saving, kind of enabling completely different use cases and to be run and at a higher efficiency as well.
Maybe just to add here, I think it's very important to have that conversation on energy consumption. Also, it's about continuously optimizing the hardware that is used. But in the end, it should not prevent us from doing something. Because if I'm a company and I want to deploy some rather like elementary models, I can do it on the cloud, and yes, that also uses energy consumption somewhere in the centers of Google or of Amazon, but that is a start. And there are still so many companies out there that don't do anything, that have hardware that is also producing or actually consuming a lot of energy, but has nothing to do with AI at all, just because the hardware is outdated and the software they're using is not existing. So it's an important discussion to have, but let's paralyze things. Let's start doing something and figure those very important things out along the way by actually learning even more things by doing multiple things at the same time.
Totally agree.
And just to add a last note, this is why we need a working regulatory framework on a European basis. So, it's easier to host data centers somewhere in Sweden or in the Nordics, where basically there are just different sources of energy than in Germany. So, for sure, even like we, as our federal data centers, we try to somehow make them as efficient as possible, and some stuff really needs to be hosted here. That might be the truth for really some core processes. But in general, if we would have a working European regulatory framework plus single market, then that's basically the size to work in. So as even if I'm now the federal politician here, that's probably nothing Germany will fix alone.
Thank you. Before we further think about how AI can solve world problems and save the world, we also want to think a bit of the opposite. As futurists, we never talk about the future. There's always futures in multiples. So we explore everything from the very bad to the best and in between, and then also encourage organizations, politicians, and individuals to take on their preferred future. So I want to start with actually a question that is way easier to answer, because we get so many images of Hollywood, of movies, and even the news, and that is, how does AI ruin the world? How does it may destroy? And I want to give a few examples, which is already mentioned earlier. For example, how do we prevent, or what happens if we put our biases into AI, because everyone human has biases and the program will put it in. But there's also another example with AI and kids, for example, growing up and listen to smart speakers who have female voices, and they give very rude commands to that and to other things. So what is really some of the ethics, and what happens if this gets out of control? So my questions for all of you, and we start with Janette on the side. How does AI could ruin the world? So what could go wrong?
I think there's always a lot of things that can go wrong with everything we do, and sometimes it takes people to do mistakes so we can do better. I think in order to prevent things going wrong, going south, it's really us all having responsibility in that regard, because it refers to us all, and I think in that respect information and education is very important, because you took the example also of those videos, of science fiction videos. I mean, they're fun to watch at, but they should not make people scared. We should have respect. I think that's okay, but in the end, AI is something that everyone should understand to a certain extent, so that he or she can actually use it for its purposes and for the good.
Daria, how do you see the threats?
Well, I think a technology per se is neutral, right? It's what you do with the technology, and it's about AI or quantum or or rockets or whatever. It's always the same question. There is always two sides of that. So I think the question is rather, how do we put a framework of control mechanism and incentives to put and to kind of have at least rules how to, and then I'm back to rules. Yes, the rules are good. to be able to manage that, right? So for me, it's rather, it's a question of regulatory, but also in a way that it gives you the flexibility to actually invent and innovate, right? And then that's one. And then I think the second thing is, like what you said, that's Hollywood movies and stories. It's also a lot about the narrative of technology, and one of the reasons, again, why I co-founded the 1 in 9 think tank is just because we really truly believe that we'll, like, as a society, not people here, but like generally, we lost the vision of wherever we are going, right? So, and I think it's also a role of the politics, kind of to create a more positive narrative around where we're going to go, and how technology also has a positive impact in general, and it applies for AI as well.
So first of all, I liked your intro to say we as futurists never talk about the future, we talk about futures. So we as regulators never talk about regulation, we talk about regulations. So I should probably just take that one for further panels. No, but jokes aside, I'm fully on the side that it comes up to what we take out of it. For sure, there is bias in the data, but thank God now we know there's bias and we have proof. So it's like shooting the messenger. It's just a mirror, so we can be angry at the mirror, but we did this. Obviously, the internet was white and halfway racist. So thanks to AI that it just showed it to us. So I can yell at the result, or I can be thankful for the way. And it's the same with like the little speakers. So my daughter is using them for sure all the time. So actually, she really understands it's a computer, so it's not male or women or whatever. But when I see how these things plays her music, explains stuff, even sometimes she doesn't understand it because Wikipedia answers are obviously not only for 6-year-old people. But in the end, if I see how I had to beg my grandma to buy me a new Benjamin Blümchen cassette or whatever, and how information for her is so easy to get. Maybe as well sometimes the wrong information, but in general it's information. So if I look at the pure results, she has more chances, she has more opportunities. Yes, for sure, with more danger, but still it's more. And therefore I guess it's really what you get out of it. And I try to create more positive visions as a politician, as basically I just received the task.
Janette mentioned that organizations need to take on more responsibilities, but unfortunately also the past have shown once technology is introduced, it is also sometimes misused and is just off the leash. We saw that with the internet and other things. So the question is AI controllable? Some companies already noticed that they created their own language once they kind of like co-created on that. So how do we get companies, or how do we get humanity to taking on this responsibility and prevent that someone just goes mad with it?
Yeah, as you, Daria, said, it's a lot about frameworks, and you can write that down. And I think that's in the regulatory that's very important because it basically makes us have one set of common values. But we also we need values in every kind of relationship, in every kind of company or just like setup, so that those things that are actually written down are lived and that we're guided by them. But they should not only prevent us from using something, but motivate us to use something in the right way and to actually not like break us down, but just basically show us the path where certain things can lead us towards.
I'd like to contradict myself now. I think we can't control everything, period. We can't control, the human nature. We can't control technology at 100% because technology is built and controlled by human nature. And I think it's a good thing because someone else will come and break the rules and develop a new paradigm, and maybe that's a good thing, right? So my answer to your question will, like, we can't make, it's not possible to make sure that we control everything.
So, I mean, therefore, we build all these regulatory frameworks, as Carla referred, or the EU does it with security levels, or Germany, or whatever. This is, I guess, the box we are in. But ultimately, so if you think that society is good, then I think the main usage we will see is good. It's like with all the other technologies. So bad stuff came out, but in the end, the good stuff won. Like GPS, I mean, it was basically done in a military scope to kill somebody. Now you order pizza and the person shows up thanks to GPS. So the good case won. So it's really like, are you on the optimistic or the pessimistic side? But saying this as a politician, I know it's not enough to be on the optimistic side. This is why, for sure, there have to be regulatory frameworks, and there is a difference if we talk about a genome or whatever chatbot. But still picking up your case about Tao or the bot who went crazy. The good thing is we don't have a general artificial intelligence as of now. So we give the freedom, this thing is stupid, it behaves like shit, we know the problem. So, and then we can fix it. As long as it's not super smart and tries to fool us into something, we still have to be thankful for that, as oddly as it sounds. But most of the time, even the companies came up with the data set and gave it for free to all the researchers. And for sure, Algorithm Watch was mentioned, they do a great job. So at the moment, we find out what can go wrong. So as long as the thing is not in the Hollywood stage of doing stuff by itself, taking over the internet and avoiding us to switch it off. And personally, talking to Siri 10 minutes per day, we are far off that she's controlling the world. So basically, we can still try to play around, like looking at lots of scientists sitting there, to play around and find out what could go wrong, that people like myself then basically can build a box to operate somehow.
Can I add that I really like what you said, because there is no general AI yet, right? And a lot of narrative coming from the media is like, it's already been done, and like the robots are out there waiting for us to kill us, and then it's all possible. But I think, like what we talked before the panel, right? Maybe you can pick up on that. Like, where do we actually stand today, and what AI can do? And that we spend a lot of time and energy thinking like how to save ourselves from like the evil of AI, and maybe the energy is better channeled developing the solutions first, right?
Yeah, I mean, we discussed about this famous gap because there is these very ambitious minds out there who want to change something and who have these great visions to actually use the technology for good. And then there is, of course, many consumer clients, but also companies who are 10, 20 years back. And I think I sometimes find it difficult to discuss challenges when we are like 30 years apart. How is that possible? And also, it's very hard to then come up with joint solutions when we hardly do anything to actually close that gap and to work together to find it closer together, and then collectively work on solutions that then bring us towards the future.
Yeah, so the problem of this dystopian future so that we saw, so whenever we see how AI destroys the world, it may also lead to that we see in the present more and more information or hints that actually show the fears and the evil. So I also want to turn this around, acknowledging, as mentioned before, there are not only good and bad futures, there's not utopia and dystopia, there are many futures in between. But I like always to challenge to say, how would a preferred future that may balance those threats will look like? Because by that, we have the chance in the present to see what I call the pockets of hope and to foster those, so foster the good examples and not only look towards the threats that then may come true because we're focusing too much on it. So, Daria, what would you say if you look 10 to 20 years into the future, and I by chance love to go further, so it seems more possible. How does a perfect world look like in balance with AI? Where is it used for, and how does humanity support it?
An easy one. Why do I start now?
As I said,
politics first.
It's easier to destroy the world than to save it, but...
No, sure. So, you know, kind of at World Fund, whatever we do, we do in order to enable like the regenerative world in the future. So 10 to 20 years from now, we hope that we still have the world crypto in a way. And I think it's not like, and I think it's, I actively decide every day to stay positive that it's still possible that we use AI or quantum, fusion technologies in order to prevent the biggest catastrophe. And as like the 3 areas what I said are probably the biggest kind of or even 5 areas is like it's follow, food and ag tech, land use, it's energy, it's built environment in general, it's manufacturing and transportation. So in all of these industries, we already today have very specific, already today there are AI use cases happening. And I truly hope that we as an ecosystem where not only the there is not silver bullet, right? So it's the politics, it's the startups, it's the research, it's corporates, it's all of us that we enable Europe to be investing more capital to develop transformative tech and build right use cases around that.
So in order to look at preferred futures, I always ask organizations to look at what are the future challenges that they may tackle with their skills and that. So how can AI then solve one of the future problems that we have? Mario?
Should I talk for companies now?
No, I said in general organizations, but it can be the same. What might be the level of support from governments that are needed that organizations can foster that?
So maybe to pick a bit up on the ideal world and then to blend the answers. So oversimplified, in the ideal world, in 10 years AI would be something like a fridge. Everybody has it, nobody knows how it works and why it's cold in there, but there's lots of trust that this thing is good and nothing happens. So if we as a government could come up to that level, that it's just happening, so you can choose where you want it to happen, but there's enough trust that you believe nothing is wrong here. That would probably the top line we could achieve. So how do we go there within 10 years? Okay, I have to leave now, I should start working. How do we go there? And then surely it comes back. It started with trust and it will end with trust. So from a government perspective, it's the regulatory framework. From a research and corporate side, it really is the ethics boards and really living up to that. But to be honest as well here, to be a bit of the party crusher, we as well need products. So only with ethics boards we might not really succeed. And this is a bit of the problem I see. So with all the good intentions of all the levels of danger, so if I'm in a startup and I just have to decide which of the 10 levels of danger I am and the other ones just upload the FaceSap app and all the kids are doing whatever funny haircuts and we have 10 million new profiles in some Chinese AI research lab. So that's probably not how it's going to work. So we all need to find a way to still be fast enough and give enough freedom, but still to be able to give enough trust. So right now I'm in the role of the ones who have to give the trust. So there, even for an FDP guy, it hurts me, but yes, there will have to be regulation for sure. But still, the outcome cannot be that we remain too slow, because we only will succeed with our ethical value if our USP is not we are the most ethical ones. We have to have products who prove that we are the most ethical ones. And this is a bit of an imbalance at the moment.
Janette, how's your preferred world look like with AI?
Looks nice. I think it's 2 parts. I think when it comes to us having big visions, we should look 10 years ahead and be super ambitious. Our founder always talks in moonshots, and I definitely support him there. But the doing needs to be happen right now. I can talk about the future. I can have long talks where I want to be, but we actually have to do something today, and not only us in the room but everyone. And that starts not only by building companies, that then goes over to educating every single person, because apart from the sustainability aspect that we touched upon before, we also have another challenge, is that our people are getting older and older. There is a decrease in the labor force, and therefore we need more automation, but we also have to get better in things, because, I mean, we have to be honest, we just, in some parts, human beings are just not good in, and we can actually improve that, and combining that all together, make sure that today we do a lot of things that will hopefully then also have a positive impact in the future.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left, so I also want to invite the audience to ask the question for the panelists, or maybe do a statement of how AI solves the world. I just need someone to pick the microphone, because I would love to fly, but I cannot even walk. And then you may just hand it further to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, my name is Christian Gutmann. I will also be speaking at 4 p.m. On the Nordic AI ecosystem, and I'm particularly interested in how we tackle this as Europeans. You mentioned it before. There are certain advantages. For example, in the Nordic countries, it's colder. So there's, for example, big data centers that are built there now because you can save energy. There's Northvolt, a big battery company, got a couple of $1 billion investment and so on. But I'm also a little bit split, you know, as we become, as we give certain parts of Europe and the world a certain dominance, you know, it's not always better. Like, I don't know, the best example I could come up with is tomatoes, right? If they are all made in certain countries, in Spain and so on, they're actually not always high level quality. I'm a bit of a food nerd, following a bit here Fabian's views earlier, but you know, like, I'm a bit split about this way of working together. I think we need to, and I think that makes us stronger. But it also, you have these long-term effects. You know, what is the best way of finding the balance between this European approach? So I just wonder if you could elaborate a little bit on that topic, if that makes sense.
So absolutely. To be honest, for sure, it's not easy. As you said, I brought up the example with, as you said, power supply and all that stuff, which might be better there. We all talk about sharing data and healthcare data. I'm not sure there are countries like a bit of East, difficult government, not sure if I really want to have my health record or whatever data's there. So for sure, it's a give and take. But in the end, I guess it's still possible, or there's one difference to maybe the tomato example. What we are mainly talking here is data. So, and it's relatively easy to do it decentralized and still somehow in control. I mean, with tomatoes, if if they are in the market, they're in the market. But for some stuff to really collaborate, and for some stuff maybe don't. So if I would be somebody from Estonia, I wouldn't probably wait for the German EID to go online to then join us. I would just use my working EID since the last 20 years. So this might maybe not be the case. But for different stuff, manufacturing, whatever, they will. And that's, again, picking up on the hype topic of sovereignty. Sovereignty cannot be that every country does everything on its own. So it never was like that. But really to see where to collaborate with. Unfortunately, we now talk about collaborating in military, which obviously makes sense. And it might, if it comes to research and curing cancer, I guess probably everybody would give the data. If it really comes to the healthcare system and really getting treatment, I guess people would be more defensive, because like if you're from the Nordics, you wouldn't probably join the Spanish system for. So long answer, because there will not be one easy thing to take, but the advantage, I really deeply believe in this, we are talking data and this is manageable, decentral, and still with some control and audit logs, and you even can basically stop corporations or whatever really easy to go on sharing data and that stuff. So that's my hope, and that's at least how I try to tackle it. But there still remain problems. So some countries be more open about genetic engineering, for example, others don't. So you might not like it. I'm personally a fan of it. So we can take about the tomato discussion then offline.
Can I add just a quick I think because we talk about Europe, we always try to kind of create a homogeneous kind of environment, which we are not and will never be. And also the data shows, it's confirmed that actually the environment within like different countries have different level of innovation degree, and that can be kind of led back to the environment. And the colder the country, the higher the innovation, because you had to that's a fact, right? Because you had to start building houses, and you had to understand the agriculture better, and so it will never be different. Like in Germany, or it's never going to be like in Sweden, and it's also never going to be like in Spain. But I think the good thing is, data, I totally agree, but also we have all this strength. I think we should kind of define that and understand that, embrace that, and see how we can learn from each other. Never seen that happening, but maybe that is something in future to kind of strive for and say, like, look, why is this country or this region strong here, and is it applicable to others? Maybe not, and why not? And I think that is, in context of technology and development and innovation and politics and all of this stuff, is we in European Union, that would be great dialogue to lead.
In the end, it's diversity, I guess. What we're trying to push into the companies, we have it on a European side, but we are not living up to it fully, and that's probably the problem here.
Janette, you wanted to add something?
No, I just wanted to round this up because I think also in the beginning you, Mario, said that we need to have regulations on a European level, and I totally agree with that, and it comes back to that, and maybe also some self-criticism from my end. I'm Swiss. And Swiss people always think that they're the best. And we do everything in the best way in Switzerland, and we can do it without the EU, we can do it without anyone else. And the reason why I'm here in Germany, and also why I've been here for the last 4 years, is actually because I love this mindset that we have here. Is basically we're part of this big thing, we're part of Europe. Let's move something together, and sometimes it's easy to forget about that and to forget about this mission. And maybe if sometimes we believe that things are actually sometimes a little bit more complex than they are, maybe we can also think of that again and actually come back to our motivation that we want to do something together and in a collective way.
Thank you. I think we have time for a few more questions. Is it okay?
That's something else.
There is a red sign in front of us, but Fabian is like, yeah. You see, you have to break rules.
Just don't believe the system.
Don't bring the sign.
Thank you very much for the great panel. And I want to circle back to the tension between curiosity and also risk and regulation. So what can we do, or what would be your suggestion to, let's say, all these large corporations out there that have all these curious young minds there to whet their appetite and their curiosity to inspire a little bit more entrepreneurship in these large corporations, using AI to maybe heal the world?
So I'm now to advise the big corporates. I mean, on the one hand side, having worked for big corporates, I mean, these are the big names. You're a facilitator. It's easier to speak to the regulator, but often, the real disruption then comes out of the startups. So, being purely open, I mean, it's a chain, and you're an important part in the middle. As sad as it is, I mean, if whatever BMW comes up to the government, wants to say something, they might get an appointment faster than a blockchain startup trying to do whatever on a blockchain. So therefore, I guess you have the role of kind of a mediator between these worlds, even if it's a super unsexy role. To be honest, this is the role I do at the moment in the political system as well, coming out of the tech sphere and now being there. But sometimes it's really just about translating. They actually want to do the same, but in a startup on the tech side, they just create tech and framework and whatever, fixing whatever micro problems. And on the other side, there are papers produced we have to regain power over data. And on the other side, you have something like whatever the Ocean Protocol, really giving you power over data, but the middle layer is absolutely missing. And it's obviously not the Bundesregierung to execute, then it's maybe VW or whomever to take it, to prove it, to show it, and then that's the adoption into the political mainstream world. So you're a translator and a bridge, even if you might don't want it to be. That's just my honest answer.
So, Carsten Kraus. Actually, Mario before said that now we have become addicted to Chinese solar panels. There is a big risk that we also get addicted to Chinese AI or to American AI. And so currently our niche in the market seems to be that we do ethical AI, but how do we ensure that ethical AI is so important for the world when we are so far behind in other AI fields and we don't catch up? How do we ensure that our AI, our ethics will still play a role when our technology does not?
Yeah, I mean, I said it maybe in a not very politically correct way with the addiction, but there is some truth to it, and I always as well brought that up. So we can not only be the guys selling ethics, so we have to prove that there are products and things which are better if we do it our way. So and it's probably not aiming for the new Google or whatever, but just to give you an example. So Skype is, I think, 17 years old or something, almost 20 years. And we now cheer at each other that we can do WebEx sessions. So like after 20 years, we're able to do it, and we talk about a Corona boost. So if Carl Benz would be the guy who is able to drive the car 20 years after somebody has invented it, it would look totally differently here. So if we are so ethical, and if whatever work-life balance or the Heimat or something is so important, like where is our meeting tool which just switches off and say go play with your kid, or does something what we value, like Tarifverträge, whatever we stand for. Where is it in some tools? Yeah, to bring up an SPD example, we are friends now, Ampel. Therefore, no, honestly, to come up with such things which we really believe on, and it must not be the new Amazon, the new whatever. We had the Mittelstand, or we still have the Mittelstand before. And I love this country because I live in Rheinland-Pfalz, really in the middle of nowhere, but Riesling is growing there. I would never, ever leave this spot. But I could work for SAP because it's close. It's a mega company in the middle of nowhere of Waldorf. So this is how I want this country to be and remain. I don't want to move to Berlin. Sorry, Berlin, it's cool here, but I don't want to. And that gives the opportunity to really come up with these things. We not foster to live in mega cities, whatever trends. So come up with the stuff we value with our tool, whatever it will be, and wherever AI is in that tool, remembering the fridge example. And I think this is what we can sell to the world. But there's a bit of catch up to do. I'm with you.
No.
Okay, Silke Hahn here from Heise. I'm a tech journalist. My question would be coming back to a point that Daria was uttering earlier. It was the fact that actually we are not in control, but technological advance is happening, and the disruption is actually upcoming and approaching. And to me, it always seems, looking into the Heise forum and how people react whenever we report or try to report an AI, artificial intelligence, people react with fear, not trust, but fear. They seem to be quite averse and skeptical towards all these quickly happening revolutions right now, and they do not want that to happen. So there's a reluctance, and I have the sense that in Germany a lot of people are opposed in a way or skeptical. So how do you actually tackle that psychological and societal issue which is not yet solved?
Yeah, I think you are a big solution to this.
Trying to, that's why I sneaked in here, yeah.
Yeah, no. You as a representative, of course, of journalists, I think journalism has to be is a core pillar of our society, and has to get away from being sensation, clickbait driven, because fear sells better. So, and I think we have to redefine the narrative and that's one of the reasons why I co-founded the 1 in 9 community, which is led by former team of Wire Germany. And then it's all about optimism and kind of in the deep dives in topics, trying not to say like, robots are coming and killing you. So I think you are a part of the solution, and I'm happy that you're asking this question. So I thank you for your contribution.
I may add to this, because this kind of expertise I do. I give talks about how can we get people from fearing the future into enjoying and welcoming the future. And it's all about, we said earlier, the mindset and even how to think about the future. In school, we have history and we learn everything about the past, but no one tells us how to actually think about the future. And there are 3 myths that we also bring up, which is, first, the future is actually not existing because it's in multipliers, it's the futures. So we still have to explore them all in order to instead to predict them. Then it's actually more a space to create and a timeline, but if we think about the future, we still think about a dot or like a line or a roadmap. And I would encourage people to open that up and to think about the bigger space that can create. And the last part is that people believe that the future is already written, and it feels like we are on this wide river, and we can steer left or right, but it pushes us into one direction. And this can be replaced by being a captain of a sailing boat on the big ocean. So there are storms that keep you away from your destination, and you have to do a detour, but it's about your skills, how to steer the boat to bring it back to the safe haven. So it's all about how we learn to deal with the complexity of the future and not see it as fear, but as chances, as the action that we can do today are still influencing that. And it encourages us to think positively more in the future so we can also see the pathways leading into that. And I think with that, we can close the panel. I thank you all for here, and I think there's now lunch for you. And thank, of course, to all the 3 of you for sharing your opinions.
Thanks for your moderation.